Confederate general, but was renamed in 2023 after Congress in 2020 created a bipartisan committee to make recommendations to rename all bases that honored Confederate generals and the Confederate war effort. This base now is being renamed for another General Polk, which we strongly disagree with, which is why we are moving in the direction of renaming the Patroon Island Bridge here in the Capital Region. It goes without mentioning, it should not go without mentioning, excuse me, that many in our region over generations have fought to recognize Sergeant Johnson's bravery and heroism throughout his years of service. This resulted in awards being presented honoring him with the Medal of Honor, the Purple Heart, and the Distinguished Service Cross. Former President Teddy Roosevelt, who, as you know, served here in the New York State government, once called Sergeant Johnson one of the 5 bravest American soldiers in World War I. And despite that accolade and many others, the significance of his achievements were overlooked for a very long time. Thanks to the efforts of Senator Schumer, support of Senator Gillibrand and Congressman Tonko, his just recognition was finally paid. And while we cannot overtake and right the wrong of taking the name of Fort Polk from Sergeant Johnson or the many other things he endured during his lifetime due to simply the color of his skin, we can come together and rename this Capital Region Gateway after a man whose bravery and sacrifice should be a model for all of us. I'd like to now ask Senator Pat Fahey to say a few words. Pat?
Thank you. Thank you, Assemblymember McDonald, and great to be joined by so many here today. Today we feel good. Last week when we received the news, it quite frankly felt like another gut punch and was a shock all over again. I first want to start, though, by saying the idea for this, I understand, was planted with us probably almost 10 years ago by my predecessor in the Assembly, Jack McEnany. John McDonald remembered that better than I did and kind of never forgot, and so it just turned out to be perfect timing when we received this gut punch that here we go again with, after a bipartisan commission steps forward in 2023, names the former Fort Polk after it switches the name to Fort Henry Johnson to give him more of his due of history, which again took about 90 years to correct after his extraordinary valor and bravery in World War I. So 90 years, I think Steve Mann in Senator Schumer's office said that took about 20 years of work in Senator Schumer's office to achieve that Congressional Medal of Honor. It led to a White House ceremony with then President Barack Obama to award that Congressional Medal of Honor. And here we go again with this whitewashing, if you will, or trying to erase Senator Johnson's history with finding another soldier named Polk, who I'm not sure who we're supposed to be kidding here, and no disrespect, by the way, to the second Fort Polk, the second soldier whose name is now being bestowed by President Trump and the Department of Defense. So no disrespect to any soldier who steps up for this country, but the current soldier Polk, whose name has now been bestowed on this fort, certainly was not a Congressional Medal of Honor winner. And so while we can't change what is being done at the federal level, the idea of taking this bridge and now naming it a bridge that tens of thousands cross, a bridge that will be seen by all, a long-standing bridge in this area, and to name it after Henry Johnson, it's just a way to at least say in the capital region, we are still going to honor this bravery, honor this extraordinary record, and stand up despite this bait and switch, if you will, at the federal level. So I just couldn't be more thrilled to sponsor this bill with all of my colleagues, and again want to give a shout out to all of those who worked for so long. I think Mayor Sheehan was at that White House ceremony the year. So this is the Capital Region's response, and we are just not going to stop. You cannot erase this history. You cannot erase that type of bravery. And here we will continue to respect somebody who deserves all of our respect. I don't know if there's a more recognized and exalted soldier in this capital region. And so after last week's body blow, it just feels great to be able to do this. And with that, who am I supposed to call on, John? You. Okay, back to John. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. I also want to recognize my colleague in the Assembly from the City of Rye, Steve Otis, who's joined us as well. And before I forget, both County Executive McCoy and McLaughlin both have submitted comments for the press release today, but unfortunately their schedules were not able to allow them to be here. But it does reinforce, and my next speaker will reinforce even more, that as much as it was a bipartisan effort to initially name Fort Polk, Fort Johnson, it's a bipartisan effort here in the capital region to recognize them. Senator Jake Ashby.
Well, thank you, Assemblyman McDonald. It's great to be here with all of my colleagues in state and local and federal government. And when Senator Fahey remarked that it took nearly a century for Sergeant Johnson to receive his Medal of Honor, he received the Croix de Guerre in 1918. So it took the French government a lot less time to recognize his acts of valor and his choice to serve 31 years before the military was desegregated, 47 years before the Civil Rights Act. Think about that. It's an important piece of history to juxtapose where we are now and why it's so important to continue to honor him here, so that his legacy, his actions, his decision to serve at a time when it was literally thankless, how we need to continue to thank him for that decision to serve and for his heroic actions, wounded 21 times. And his unit, if I'm not mistaken, had been moved to serve with the French because that was the custom at that time, because of the racial divide. It's an enormous act of valor, and one that garnered the respect out of President Roosevelt's son, and everybody here today continues to recognize that. And this is what we can do here. We can control this. We have agency over this here in the Capital District. And it's one that we will continue to use together. And I'm grateful to be a part of it, grateful to continue to honor his legacy and the gift that he gave us here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Next, I'm going to call them up together just because on the west side of I-90, it actually bisects the city of Albany, which is Gabrielle Romero's district, and Phil Steck, which is on the other side in the county. So Gabrielle and Phil, come on up.
Sure, thank you. So today we stand united to make sure that the legacy of one of Albany's greatest heroes, Sergeant Henry Johnson, is honored permanently. I'm joined by my fellow colleagues in the Senate and the Assembly, and local colleagues. I see that we're joined by County Executive Dan McCoy just now. We're introducing this legislation to rename the Patroon Island Bridge after Sergeant Henry Johnson. This Medal of Honor recipient, and this is a symbol of courage, justice, and patriotism. It's unfortunate that the federal government has chosen this shameful act, but here in the state legislature, we are choosing patriotism, courage, and frankly, to stand up for this patriotic Sergeant Henry Johnson. This is about what we do and who we choose to remember, and I'm so frankly honored to be joined by my colleagues here to introduce this legislation and pass it next year. This is really about being courageous and using our power here in the state legislature to do what we can in face of the federal action. So I'm really proud to be one of the original co-sponsors here with my colleague, Assemblymember Phil Steck. I'm not sure if you also want to say some words, Phil.
Thank you very much, Gabriella. In studying African American history, there's a consistent theme which I think is epitomized by what we're doing today, is that African American soldiers fought for this country and then came home to a nation where they were devalued, which was a segregated nation. And the fact that the President of the United States, Donald Trump, would choose to continue this is not just symbolized in this. I was the sponsor of a bill this year that we passed in both houses that eliminates restrictive covenants in deeds, including racially restrictive covenants. And during that debate, I had learned in my preparation that the President of the United States issued an executive order which says that federal contractors no longer have to observe a desegregated workplace, if you can imagine that. So if there's any symbol of the fact that this president wants to move backwards, not forwards, it is the fact of what we are doing today, which is naming the Patroon Bridge after Henry Johnson, but also that we had to pass state legislation to deal with outright discrimination in the federal government. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Next up is our County Executive, Dan McCoy, who not only knows and loves the city of Albany and the county, of course, but also knows a little bit about serving our country. Dan?
Thank you, Assemblymember, for doing this. And, you know, to echo what Senator Ashby was saying, you look at someone that was so distinguishedly honored in his military career 100 years later. You know, I think it was 1986, Senator Schumer got him his Purple Heart, 2015 Medal of Honor. I had the honor to go down to the White House when the National Guard received the honor medal for him. And I've said this time and time again, before you rename stuff, you take down statues, you have to educate the public, the good, the bad, the ugly. You got to talk about why that name was there, if it was a Confederate general, or what the statue meant, so we don't repeat history. And unfortunately, I didn't have the honor to go down when they renamed the post for Henry Johnson. And to see this post get renamed and then yanked down with no real clarification other than they want to put another name on it, it's a disservice to his legacy, to his service to the community, and his service to the military. And being a combat vet, you know, and like Senator Ashby in the military too, it's bothersome. I want to thank the Assembly member and the senators, the two senators, Fahey and the two Assembly members, for taking this step and renaming the bridge, because it's the first step to many. I did get some phone calls from an article that was in the Times Union today about renaming the airport, which I chuckled. So I want to help you and say, the reason why I laughed, I wanted to call the reporter and say maybe you should do a little bit of homework. Orlando's airport abbreviation is MCO. Do you know why? MCC? Oh, can I help you out maybe? McCoy. It's actually still identified as McCoy Airport. You cannot, it's physically impossible to change the identification of airports. So if you go to Orlando, and you can Google it, when the Air Base closed, Fort McCoy, by the way, Air Force, closed in 1978, and it became the Orlando Airport, the abbreviations is still McCoy, because it's hard international and nationally to change stuff like that. I want to clarify that, because if I get another phone call, I don't want to have to keep explaining that. But this is a great step. But we need, unfortunately, and they have said this, we need to continue to educate people here around the Capital District, around this country, the reasons why. And to see somebody that took so long to get the medals that he deserved back in World War I, and over 100 years to right the ship, and now to unright the ship, is not the message this nation needs right now in this country. We need a message of solitude, coming together, and we need leadership. And I want to thank the Senate Assembly for taking this on and making this happen. So thank you, John.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you. Next up is an individual who has really, from my perspective, spearheaded even more information and knowledge about Sergeant Henry Johnson, and that is our mayor, the capital city of Albany, Kathy Sheehan.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and it is great to be joined by the elected officials behind me and to our partners, and I refer to them often as our partners in state government, and this was a very welcome surprise. I did not know that this was going to be proposed until they proposed it and announced it, and it was a sign of solidarity, a sign of respect, and a message to a community who was particularly harmed by this, our communities of color, that we see you, we know what's going on here, we understand exactly what this is, and we are not going to allow it to stand. This bridge is a bridge that is crossed by millions, I would say, of vehicles as people traverse east to west across this great state. And to be able to see that sign and have Henry Johnson's name and think about, you know, those kids who might be going on a vacation to the Cape, you know, getting out their computers that they now carry in their pockets, and being able to look up Henry Johnson and hear the story of an individual who truly merits, in a meritocracy, merits the recognition that he has received. He merited having an Army base named after him. This was something that he earned. And to send a message that we are going to go back to the names of Confederate-era generals is a very specific message. It's a very specific message that is sent to demonstrate to people that when we talk about making America great again, we're talking about making America a white supremacist country again. And I said it, I mean it, and that is why this is so important. Thank you.
Our last speaker, before we open up to any questions, is Jackie Jones, who's the commander of the North Albany American Legion Post 1610. Jackie?
Good afternoon. As a veteran and a proud member of this community, I stand here today filled with both pride and purpose. I'm elated that New York State is moving to rename the Patroon Island Bridge in honor of Sergeant Henry Johnson. It's a powerful and long overdue tribute to a man who risked his life in the trenches of World War I, fighting off enemy forces to protect his fellow soldiers. Here in the Capital Region, we honor Sergeant Henry Johnson in many ways. There are statues that bear his likeness. There is a school named after him. And at Albany High, his legacy lives on through the Sergeant Henry Johnson Junior ROTC program, where young cadets are learning the values of service, discipline, and leadership that he so courageously embodied. Because we understand Sergeant Henry Johnson is just not a local hero, he is a national symbol of courage, sacrifice, and resilience. That's why the recent decision to remove his name from the U.S. military installation is not just disappointing, it's a disgrace. It erases a story that must be told, and it dishonors the legacy of Black servicemen who have fought and bled for this country, often